Valley Congressman Jim Costa, who is the co-chair of the Crime Survivors and Justice Caucus, awarded Fresno County Senior Deputy District Attorney Miiko Anderson a Congressional Award for all of her work when it comes to criminal justice. And I want to talk to both of you about this award. Thank you so much for joining us. We do appreciate it.
Well, Medeiros, thank you for giving an opportunity to highlight a real star here in our valley who's doing such good work. Miiko Anderson, as a senior deputy district attorney, is really specialized in a very important area, a serious area, dealing with trafficking in our valley. I co-chair the Crime Survivors and Justice Caucus that we started a number of years ago with a Republican colleague, and our purpose is really to support funding for organizations like the Marjorie Mason Center and other good things that go on around the country, legislation on behalf of victims of crime. And every one of us either know a family or a friend or someone that's been a victim of crime. And then we recognize individuals and organizations like the Marjorie Mason Center and others for their good work. And I'm honored today to present to you Miiko Anderson, recipient of the Susan McDaniels Memorial Award for Public Awareness. It's presented to individuals who have used their voice to promote and change the national level for crime victims. And I'd like to present this on behalf of the caucus, and I'll let you talk to Miiko about all her good work.
Yeah, and
thank you.
Miiko, can you speak to us a little bit about your story? I mean, I looked into your story, grew up in Oakland, and then also just all of the work that you have done with human trafficking. There has been a sharp increase over the years of the number of cases that are being prosecuted and the convictions. Can you speak about what you are seeing locally and just nationally as well with this topic?
Oh, absolutely. And I would like to thank first Congressman Costa for the nomination and for the selection. It's really important because it highlights something that's super important as far as Central Valley, but it really is a nationwide issue. Actually, it's a global issue. And one of the reasons that I have been so, I guess, so impassioned to make sure that the voices of these survivors are heard is because, one, I do have a very personal connection to the issue, but also professionally, working our human trafficking unit that was created and with the support and the authority of my office here in Fresno County. I saw so many different victims and survivors and so many different faces and so many different walks of life, but all experiencing the same trauma, very intense and very devastating. And so it's really an honor for me to work with them and help amplify the voices in their stories.
Senior Deputy District Attorney, you talked about your personal connection to this. You've shared your story about a family member and really human trafficking happening underneath your nose, and how that connected you personally to this topic and prosecuting. Can you speak to viewers at home about that?
Oh, absolutely. And so I do this with full permission and consent of my family member, who was actually my daughter at the time, who I discovered was a trafficking victim, and I did not know anything about trafficking at the time. I was still a prosecutor, and I was prosecuting gang crimes, but I was made aware through an anonymous tip that my daughter was being trafficked in another city. And as time went on, I discovered that she was trafficked not just here in California, but in several different states, and suffered some really brutal attacks. And I saw firsthand the intense amount of trauma that she suffered, and I also saw how bewildered and confused I was as a parent. One, how did I let this happen? And two, what do I do now? So that's part of the reason that kind of fueled everything. And from there, our office, we kind of launched a human trafficking unit so we could prosecute these crimes once I became more aware of what they were and what the law was around it. We did a multi-jurisdiction task force that is still in existence now. And then from there, the trainings of law enforcement officers, community members, parents, and caregivers have probably been the biggest passion. It's the thing that I get up like at 4 o'clock in the morning on my own time to do, and it's something that I just cannot not do.
In training 2,000 law enforcement about this, can you speak about your role in that and all the training that goes into such a serious topic as human trafficking?
Sure, it's really important, and that's why I'm so grateful that for the recognition, and not necessarily so much for myself, but because human trafficking really focuses on at a higher rate in underserved communities. And so training officers on how to be culturally sensitive and how to be trauma informed when they approach victims and survivors of trafficking is huge. Whether it be labor trafficking or sex trafficking, it's huge to make sure that you have that connection, because these people have been exploited sometimes to such a degree that they have a fear of reporting and a fear of law enforcement. So to have that sensitivity from the beginning makes a huge impact on how successful you are at prosecuting the case.
What would you like people at home to know about human trafficking and how they can report or come forward? Because sometimes, you talked about it with me earlier, that this is really the tip of the iceberg when we're talking about human trafficking and the cases that go unknown. And so can you speak to those at home, if they do have a similar story, what they should do next?
I would suggest the first thing is to really educate yourself. There are so many different resources that you can look up online on just recognizing what those red flags are, what the resources are for that. And if there is something that you have a concern about, act on it, and don't let shame or anything else slow you down or delay that response, because the exploitation is happening. And those who may be working with people who have been trafficked, to make sure that you focus on self-care, because the amount of secondary trauma that law enforcement, healthcare providers, those people receive is huge, because these things can be very intense. Either whether it's through imagery or just witnessing someone's story, can still have an effect on some of the professionals secondarily. So if you're a professional, make sure you have a plan for secondary care, because it's important.
And for Miiko and her law enforcement officials she works with and the schools, it's so much more complicated today with social media and the internet and the way this insidious crimes are perpetrated, and especially with young people. And so it's so important that the good work that she does, and our district attorney and the law enforcement agencies.
Thank you so much, Congressman. Thank you so much, Senior Deputy District Attorney. Do appreciate coming on here, sharing your story. You're doing a lot of good work, making waves in the community. If you would like to hear more about Miiko's story, you can visit our website, yourcentralvalley.com.